Somebody has. So thank you very much, dear participants. I welcome you on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association. Today is our first day of our workshop. We are going to learn about econometrics, beginning of the econometrics, basics of the econometrics, or introduction of the econometrics. So today we are having distinguished resource persons, Dr. Tanya Naityal and Dr. Rubina Pradhan. So I will hand over my session to Dr. Rubina. Kindly go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Firdaus. We are going to start the session. A very good evening to everyone. Welcome to the first session of the 7-day online workshop on research methodology in econometrics, organized by Jindal Center for the Global South, the Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association, and Global South Research Foundation. I am Dr. Rubina Pradhan, Assistant Professor, Center for Research in Social Sciences and Education, Jain Dintibi University, Bangalore. Research methodology structures economic inquiry, while econometrics applies statistics to test theories and analyze data. Together, they enable evidence-based understanding, linking theory with real-world data for informed economic analysis and policymaking. Today, we have with us Dr. Tanya Nautyal, who will be discussing the very foundation of the research methodology and econometrics. But before I hand it over to her, let me have this pleasure to formally introduce her. Dr. Tanya Nautyal is an assistant professor at ONS Degree College, affiliated with Sri Dev Suman University, Uttarakhand. She holds a PhD in economics from Jamia Millia Islamia and has expertise in financial inclusion, microfinance, development economics, macroeconomics, gender inequality, and public finance. She has served as a research fellow at the Tax Policy Research Unit, Ministry of Finance, contributing to taxation and financial development policies. Dr. Nautyal has also taught at the Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration, training future civil servants. She has 8 research publications and has presented papers at various national and international conferences. We welcome you. Welcome, Dr. Tanya. The floor is all yours.
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Dr. Rubina Pradhan for such a great introduction. Thank you so much, ma'am. It is a privilege to meet you virtually, and I'm very thankful to Jammu Kashmir Economic Association and Global South Research Foundation for giving me this opportunity, especially Dr. Firdaus Ahmed Malik. I'm very glad and I'm very grateful. So I'll take 1 minute time or 20-second time. I just want to thank my supervisor, although she must not be watching this, but I just want to thank her for shaping me into a person whom I am today, Professor Sabah Ismail. She has been a valuable support throughout my academic journey, and I will always be grateful for her. Grateful to her. So all my achievements are because of her. So should I share my screen now?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah.
You have to unmute. Dr. Tanya, you're there? We are not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can.
So my screen is visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So shall I start?
Please, please.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, all the students, all the faculties. As you know that as Dr. Rubina Pradhan has already introduced me to you, I just want to tell you that my name is Dr. Tanya Nautiyal. I'm an assistant professor at ONS Degree College. So we'll start today's lecture. It is Introduction to Research Methodology and Econometrics. So in this session we will cover types of research. We will broadly cover types of research, types of data, what is research, features of research, and role of econometrics, and basic assumptions of classical linear regression model. See, research methodology and econometrics are very crucial in today's time. If you are into academics and you are pursuing your career in actually research methodology and econometrics are two of the fields in which you need to have expertise. Okay, now we'll start with this. What is research? So as you know that research is made up of two words, re and search, where re means again and search means to find, means again and again you are finding something, researching something. So we will basically discuss what is research and why it is done. So research is basically a systematic investigation. So what do you mean by systematic? Systematic is structured process. That means it has a structure, it has a sequence, it has a logical sequence. It is stepwise process which you have to go through in order to discover something, discover a new knowledge, or actually confirm existing theories or solve any kind of practical issues. Um, so we can say that research is a systematic process of inquiry, and it is done to create knowledge or to add on to the existing knowledge. Fine. So we will next move on to fundamentals of research. Now there are some points, or these can also be called features of research. So we will actually discuss them one by one. So first is systematic. So as I told you, what is systematic? Systematic means it is structured process. Matlab, there is a logical sequence of steps. It is structured, it is well organized. That means your systematic thing. Next comes your empirical. Empirical means that the research is actually based on some observation and some what you can say, measurable evidence. Matlab research is something which you can measure by in numeric terms or in the data terms. So that measurable evidence has to be derived from the real world. So whatever the evidence comes and whatever the conclusions are drawn from that evidence, that comes from the actual data. So that conclusion has to be that thing which we can apply in the real world, or we can apply to the population. So empirical research in short means real measurable evidence which is derived from the real world, and the conclusion can also be moved on to the real world. Third comes your controlled. What does controlled research means? See, research has to be controlled. There are many types of research. Like for example, we do scientific research, clinical research. In those type of research, controlling is very much important. Research should be controlled, especially if we are doing an experimental research. By controlling, we mean minimizing the influence of extraneous variables. मतलब जो आपके बाहर के variables होते हैं, मॉडल के बाहर के जो variables होते हैं, उनके अफेक्ट को मिनिमाइज करना, so as the relationship between the variables in the model doesn't suffer. Okay, see it is a very basic thing. You have a model which you measure. Okay, now in controlled research, the actually research should be done in a way in which बाहर के जो variables हैं, that is the extraneous variables, should not impact your model. Your model should only be impact of the variables which are mentioned in the model. So controlling of research is also very
Dr. Tanya, I think your
research.
network.
Whenever we write a research paper.
Dr. Tanya?
Yes, ma'am.
I think there's some problem with your network. There's a cut of your voice. Your voice is breaking in between.
Okay. Ma'am, as far as I know, my net is working fine.
Okay, because we lost you for some time. It's okay, you can continue.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay. So we were discussing about the controlled research. I will repeat it once again because as we lost the connection, as ma'am told. So controlled research means controlling of research is very much important in experimental research. By controlling of research, we means that the influence of extraneous variable on the model should be minimum. We have a model, we actually measure the impact of relationship, we actually measure the correlation direction of relationship. So the model which we are measuring, it should be free from the extraneous variable. That is any type of variable which is outside the model should not be impacting your own model. Next, we'll come to the logical. Logical means everything you do in your research, every finding, every statement you write in your research should have a logical reasoning behind it. That's why we say that we need to cite our statements again and again in our paper, because we need to give a logical reasoning behind it. Next comes your unbiased. Unbiased means that findings should be based on some facts and evidence and not on what researcher wants to find. That your research should not be researcher specific, it should be evidence specific. Whatever the evidence you have collected and whatever the result is coming out of those evidence and those data and those tests, it should be presented in that manner only. It should not be presented as to what the researcher wants to find. Okay. Now next comes is validity of research. What does validity means? Validity means the extent to which the research study measures what it intends to measure. For example, like in the population, we have the entire population. We can't study the entire population. We take out a sample out of that population. So the result of our research should be that much valid that we can further move on that result to the population. It should be valid and it should measure what it intends to measure. Next point is your reliability, which means consistency and stability of measurement and finding. What does stability and consistency mean? Which means that a thing which doesn't change. If a researcher has to do that particular research again and again, the results should be same under the same circumstances. Reliability means that if a similar research is done again and again, the results, the findings should give you the similar result. And the last is generalizable. Generalizable means the ability to apply your findings to the population. The research should be generalizable. Your sample survey should be able to should be generalizable to a population. Next is your replicable, which means that the research could be repeated by another person. It should be that much authentic, it should be that much informative. Next comes your ethical. Ethical part we'll discuss in the coming video. So research ethics करके एक आपका part है. So we'll study there. So these are some of the fundamentals of research and what does research mean. Okay. Next we come to the research aim and research objective. What is research aim? See, research aim actually expresses the intention behind a research. Whenever we do a research, um, whenever we decide to write a paper or decide to go for PhD, decide to go for a research, there has to be an intention behind it. What is your intention behind that research? What are you aiming to achieve from that research? Okay, that is your intention, your aspiration behind the study. Okay, it summarizes in a single sentence what you hope and wish to achieve from the study. Okay, the research aim is phrased by SMART. The full form of this is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time bound. So this is the phrase for the research aim. Now, just like research aim, what is research objective? Research objective divides the research aim into several parts. Now, to simplify it, I would say that research aim specified what needs to be studied. Okay, but research objective comprises of a number of steps that addresses how research aim would be achieved. Which means research aim आपको ये चीज बताएगा कि क्या पढ़ना है, but research objective will tell you how you will achieve your research aim. Okay. Now when we talk about objective, there are two things in objective. Okay, one is general objective and the second one is specific objective. General objective is generic objective, which means very broad. For example, like I have mentioned here, to what is the impact of education. Now from this statement only you can see how much broad this statement is. From education, as you know that education comprises of primary education, secondary, verbal, formal, informal. So you can see how broad the term education is. Now coming to the next word, which is impact. Impact also comprises of social impact, economic impact, cultural impact, political impact. So both of these both these words comprises of similar words in itself. So how broad this topic is. Now if we had to narrow down this topic, if we have to go from general to specific, what will be the objective? The objective could be, what is the impact of COVID vaccine on primary school students, right? So this is the specific objective which can be achieved very easily. What is the impact of COVID vaccine on primary school students in the district? As we know, in the district, we have to collect data of primary school students in a particular district and see the impact of COVID vaccine. It is achievable and it is very narrow. We take another example. For example, how does economic policy affect growth? This is a very broad objective, because there are n number of economic policies. Which economic policies you are talking about? Growth can be measured in terms of GDP, in terms of per capita income, in terms of in terms of economic growth, economic development. So it is a very broad objective. Now if we have to narrow it down, if we have to narrow down how does economic policy affect growth, we can say that what is the causal impact of GST implementation in India on revenue of SMEs in 2017 to 2020. So see how specific this objective has actually become. You have to take the GST revenue data and you have to take the revenue growth data of SMEs from 2017 to 2020. How specific this objective has become. So these are some of the examples. Now, for example, if I say another example, we'll take to explore a new idea. Many of you must have seen some papers which starts with a research objective to explore this, to gain insight into this phenomenon. These all are very generic objective. Like for example, if we say to explore the effect of globalization, it in itself is a very broad objective and it requires very in-depth study. So objectives are two types of objective, general as well as specific. So as a researcher, you need to specify your objective. You need to narrow down your objective for good understanding of people and for you to achieve good results. Okay, another example we'll take of research aim and research objective. Whenever we start writing a paper, there has to be a title, research title. For example, we have a title, Effects of Organizational Culture on Business Profitability, a case study of ABC company, XYZ company. So the research aim here is to assess the effects of organizational culture on business profitability. Now from this research aim, we will come to the research objective. Objective can be analyzing the nature of organizational culture at ABC company by March 2024. Now you see how specific this objective has come. From the research aim, how we have come up to research objective. Next objective could be identifying factors impacting ABC organizational culture. So this also is very specific. Third can be analyzing the impact of organizational culture on the performance of labor working in that organization. Now, now you got it that research aim is a very broad concept. It is the intention behind the study, and from research aim, several objectives are drawn. Okay. Now the second segment of our study is types of research. There are many types of research. We'll start with the basic research, which is also called pure research, fundamental research, or you can say theoretical research. See, basic research is just out of curiosity. Like, it is not, it is there is no motive behind this. The motive behind this is not problem solving. Matlab, actually, the researcher is not solving anything here. He is just inquisitive. He just wants to know something. He is very curious. So basic research is driven out of curiosity and desire to expand theoretical knowledge for knowledge sake. For example, if we say that how cultural beliefs and values are maintained within a society. Okay, this research is not empirical research. This research is a theoretical research in which you are you are finding something to expand the knowledge. So the primary goal here is to understand the fundamental principles and not to expand knowledge. Okay, like for example, I'll give a very simple example to you. uh, uh, like we say na, in actually Indian culture, married women needs to wear a silver ring on the second finger of their toe. So if a person is inquisitive to know what is the reason behind it, what is the significance behind it, why a married woman needs to wear it on the second finger, then that research could be basic research, just an inquisitive mind, and and which is driven out of curiosity. A person is curious to know something. Okay, now the best example of basic research can be Newton's law of motion. Now, how does Newton came up with this law? He was sitting under a tree, and apple fell down. Okay, and then he came up with the concept of gravity. So he just had a question, why apple is falling down. So that was not a problem solving research. That was some inquisitiveness, and that was some curiosity which he was having at that particular time. So basic research is not trying to solve immediate problem. Here the basic aim is to generate knowledge. Okay. Okay. Now the second one is the applied research. It is just the opposite of the basic research. It is used to solve the problem, or it is conducted to find an immediate solution. Okay. For example, if we say finding medicine for COVID-19 or AIDS, right? So this when COVID happened, when the lockdown happened, that vaccine of COVID-19 was the main agenda of actually government, of hospitals. The main research was going on for COVID. Okay, so this type of research is done to actually solve something in the economy. We call this applied research because the result of the research is applied to the practical area. Whenever we find the COVID vaccine, it is given to the people. It is given to the population. So that's why we call it applied research, because it is applied to the real world. It is applied to the practical area. The orientation here of this research is testing out facts and association. Okay, this is the primary this is the prime focus of this type of research, which we can say is problem solving. Now next, I think I've missed out descriptive research. Okay, I'm really sorry. I think missed out descriptive research. I'll just explain you what descriptive research is. Descriptive research is when you describe the characteristics of a population. It actually involves surveys and fact-finding studies. Okay, it consists of inquiries. It aims to systematically describe the characteristic of a population. Okay, it answers what, who, and when, where, rather than why and how. it actually doesn't investigate cause and effect relationship or something like that. It actually just describes you the characteristics of population. There is no manipulation in this type of research, descriptive research. The prime example of descriptive research could be census, which comes every 10 years, which gives you the information, which gives you the survey. Next could be the market researchers who wants to observe the habits of consumers. This can also be a descriptive research. Now the next thing is your analytical research. What is analytical research? Analytical research uses real facts or information for actually analysis to make a critical evaluation. It includes investigating cause and effect relationship. Okay, it delves into the data, it understands the relationship, it draws the conclusion and make informed decision. So the process of the process of analytical research is, you know, gathering and analyzing the data and actually analyzing that data and making informed decision from that data. It actually uses the real facts and information. For example, if we take analyzing the impact of climate change, for this we need to investigate the effects. For this we need to see the greenhouse gas emission, temperature change, melting of glaciers. All this data we need to collect, and we need to analyze all of this. Next is your forecasting GST revenue. If I need to forecast GST revenue, then I need to collect GST revenue data, historical GST revenue data, and on the basis of that I will make a forecasting of the upcoming months or upcoming years. So analytical research is when you have to analyze the data and make informed decisions with that type of research. So next is your quantitative research. There are two types of research in this: quantitative and qualitative. See, by quantitative, you need to remember quantity. Quantity can be measured. So quantitative research is somewhere related to numbers. Data is collected in numerical form, and results are also published in numbers. You just need to remember by quantitative research that it is quantity which can be measured, and the results come out in numbers. So aim here is to generalizability to larger population. So example could be survey research. Okay, then there could be one more example. There could be an example examining the relationship between number of hours students spend studying and his exam score. So here you will take data on number of hours student has spent studying and his examination scores. So both the data will be in numeric form, and obviously the answer or the findings will also come in numerical form. Next, your example could be a study surveying 1,000 university students to determine their satisfaction level with online learning on a scale of 1 to 5. So you all must have come across some feedback questionnaires where you get to, you know, put your feedback or feedback on the scale of 1 to 5. So all these studies are quantitative research which we are doing, which includes numbers. Okay. Now, contrary to it is the qualitative research. Here the researcher is understanding the opinions, experiences, and the attitude or behavior of people. It has nothing to do with numbers. This type of research does not involve numbers. This type of research studies human behavior deeply. It goes deeply into the human behavior. Qualitative research is mostly done in social sciences. Most of your psychological researches are actually qualitative research. So income behavior, cultural beliefs. One of the example is studying the behavior of people regarding COVID vaccine, studying the culture of Europeans. What was the culture of European? So qualitative research is a very in-depth research. You know, what I feel, I might be wrong, that quantitative research, when you have numbers now, it is easy to, you know, analyze it and come up to a conclusion. But if you are doing a qualitative research, if you are understanding someone's opinion and understanding the attitude, behavior of people towards something, it requires in-depth knowledge. And in-depth knowledge comes from a very thorough review of literature and very thorough observation. So qualitative research, I feel that it is very in-depth research and it requires very good observation skills, I would say. So here we, I think, end up with the types of research. Okay. Now next comes your process of research. Process of research, we would say that supposingly we write a research paper. You as PhD scholars, you as research associates, or maybe as assistant professors, we all write research papers. So there is a sequence of step which we have to follow in the research paper writing. So process of research is a series of steps that we need to follow to answer the question or to achieve our objective. Okay. So the steps are as follows. First one is formulating a research problem or a research question. So the process of research starts from formulating a research problem. Okay. It means identifying a very broad area of interest. For example, if I want to write a paper, my interest is on financial inclusion. Okay, so I have formulated my research problem that I want to explore the effect of financial inclusion on growth. Okay, so it is a broad area. Now I have to specify this area, I have to narrow it down. So that comes from preliminary research, exploratory literature review, which is done in the first step only. After you have identified the problem, after you have decided the general topic which interests you, or maybe which is relevant to your field. So you, after that, you start doing the preliminary research, exploratory research, to in order to get the understanding about the topic. So this exploratory research helps you identifying the area which needs further investigation. Okay, so the first step here is formulating a research problem, which starts from having a broad interest topic, and then doing exploratory research, and then narrowing down the research problem. Okay, now the second step here is, which is very important step in process of research. According to me, there I might be having a contradictory view from other people, but I feel that in a research, review of literature is the most crucial part of the research. Review of literature is a systematic and critical review of all the past papers which are written. Okay, it means that scholar has to go deeply into the research in order to come up with a good finding. Okay, so review of literature includes understanding the theory and concepts of um, of your problem, understanding the previous findings, understanding the methodology. Whenever we do literature review, we actually find some good papers related to our topic, and then we see what that researcher has aimed, what actually methodology he has used, what are his findings, and based on this we will identify the gaps and contradiction. We will actually pinpoint what hasn't been studied, or area of disagreement, or the limitation of that particular research which you can address. So your research gap comes from your review of literature. I think the next step could be research gap, which comes after the review of literature. When you are done with the critical review and systematic and in-depth review of literature, then you come up with the research gap. Research gap means which the previous researchers have not done and you will do in your research. What gap you have identified from the previous review of literature you have done. Okay. Now, the third step is designing the methodology. After you have decided your research question, after you have narrowed down your problem, next step is to choose the research approach, like whether the research will be qualitative or it will be quantitative or it will be mixed mean qualitative and quantitative both. You will select a research design, you will select a strategy. So as how will you will answer the research question. Okay, you will in this step, which is the designing of methodology, you will actually decide that what type of research you will do, primary research or it will be a secondary research. See, there are two types of research, primary and secondary research. Primary research is when you collect the data on your own. It is the authentic, it is the first hand data. Secondary data, when you collect data from some surveys, or you can from some websites. So in your methodology, you will mention that what type of research you are doing. It is a primary research or it is a secondary research. If it is primary or secondary, it is quantitative or it is qualitative. You will mention that in your methodology. You will collect your data in this step. Or if you are doing primary research, you will also go for pilot study. Pilot study is when you pilot study is mainly the subset of your survey, like small trial which you do before the survey to identify and fix any type of problem which can occur in your sample survey. So this is your designing the methodology step. After you have designed the methodology, after you have decided that what type of research you are doing, how you will do, next comes your collecting of data. If it is a primary research, you will do it in the method of surveys. You will collect the data and then you will put it in the laptop. If you are doing in terms of secondary research, in terms of some surveys or fact finding, then you will download the data and put it in Excel. So that is your collecting data. You need to keep record of that data. In this step, it is very mandatory to keep a record of that data, whether it is primary or it is secondary. Now next step is your analyzing data. Okay, now once you have collected the data, now it is ready for the analysis. Now in the analysis part, you will do the cleaning of data or anything, cleaning or organizing or coding, anything related to that. After that is done, after the cleaning of data or coding of data is done, you will apply the analytical techniques. For example, if you have a quantitative data, that which means if you have a numerical data, then you will use the softwares like SPSS, R, eViews for numerical data. If you have qualitative data, then you will use visual data, thematic analysis to interpret your findings. Okay, so this part of this step of research requires cleaning your data and then applying statistical tools to come up with the finding. So last part is your interpreting results and drawing conclusions. Here comes your conclusion, which you have got from the analysis. Whatever analysis you have done, whatever data you have collected, whatever analysis you have done, there it needs to be interpreted. So interpreting results and drawing conclusion actually gives the answer to your research question. Whatever your research question was, that whatever was the research question initially, last part, interpreting results, gives the answer to that question. Now one thing which I would like to say in this part, last part, I feel that every research should also acknowledge the limitation, which I feel that there is no research which actually doesn't have any limitation. There has to be some type of limitation in every study. So I would prefer if the acknowledgement of limitation is done in the last step of the result, and the next could be the policy implication or the suggestion or the suggestion for future research. For example, if I'll give you an example, I was last month writing a paper on GST revenue forecasting. Okay, so I have applied. It was a time series model, so I applied ARIMA or auto regressive integrated moving average. Okay, I applied this methodology for my research. After some time, I actually realized that the correct methodology for my paper could be SARIMA, which is auto seasonal auto seasonal auto regressive integrated moving average, because in GST revenue there was a shock, which was COVID shock. I have actually done the analysis from 2017 to 2025. So in that period there was COVID shock. So COVID shock could have been measured correctly by the SARIMA method. So that was the limitation of my study, which I have also mentioned in my research. Okay, and next comes your suggestion for the future research. That is, you are actually proposing new questions or actually direction for further investigation. Whatever your findings are, that can help other actually researchers to do their part of research. Whatever findings you have done, that can suggest the future research. And I feel that every type of research should have that particular paragraph which actually suggests future research. So here we end with the process of research. These are the steps. So whenever we write a paper, we do a research, we need to follow these steps. Okay. Now come the nature and scope of econometrics. Till now we have studied the research methodology. Now come the econometrics. What is econometrics? See, econometrics is basically the combination of economic theory, statistics, and maths. Okay. In short, we can say in shortly, I could say that econometrics bridges the gap between the abstract economic theory and the real world data. It actually allows researchers to give empirical content to economic theory. For example, if there is a theory, higher interest rates reduces investment. Okay, this is an abstract economic theory. With the help of econometrics, we can give empirical content to this statement. We can take data on interest rates, we can take data on investment, and then we can see how this theory is going, what is saying, like does really interest rate and actually investment has inverse relationship. We can see with the empirical analysis. So the prime objective of econometric is to give empirical content to economic relationship. Okay, now if we talk about scope of econometrics, there is a vast scope of econometrics, starting with forecasting. See, like I told you, GST revenue forecasting. Okay, I have taken monthly GST revenue from 2017 to June 2025, and based on those data, I am making a forecasting from July 2025 and December 2025. So here the econometrics comes up, because econometrics gives us the tools for forecasting. Okay, next is your testing of economic hypothesis. Supposingly there is a economic theory. Supposingly there is an economic theory. You all must have known Phillips curve, which says the inverse actually relationship between unemployment and inflation. See, again, it is an abstract theory. Okay, it is a theory, it is a statement, but econometrics helps us to give empirical content to it. We will collect data on inflation, we will collect data on unemployment, and see if that theory holds true or not. Okay, third, the scope can be quantifying the relationship, means giving a number. Okay, giving the determining the magnitude of relationship between variables. For example, how much consumption changes for 1% increase in income. This could be measured by econometric tool. So all in all, econometrics has have a very huge scope in actually today's field, and especially in policy making. You all must have heard this word, evidence based policy making, which is going on today in actually today's time. Every policy is made out of some evidence which is collected from data. So all this thing comes from data, and all this is all the policy making, all the evidence based policy making is done because of econometrics, or with the help of econometrics. Okay, then I think we haven't discussed the research ethics part, right? I'm sorry, I don't have that slide, but I will take just 5 minutes. It was, although it was not mentioned in the lecture plan, but I'll take a minute to actually discuss research ethics. Now, now before moving on to research ethics, we will discuss what ethics are. Ethics are basically moral principles and values which a person has, or or moral principles, moral principles and values. Okay, now when research is attached to research ethics, it means that moral principle that guidelines the conduct of research, what ethics one should follow while researching. Okay, so there are some principles which I would like to discuss, just two or three. One is that respect for the respondent. Okay, respecting their confidentiality. So uh, there are numerous types of research. Supposingly we are doing a research on a very controversial topic like crime against women, like criminal cases. If we are taking data, if we are actually taking interview of these people, we need to respect the confidentiality. We need to respect their space, and we need to take their consent before taking the data. Second is second there is research ethics says that there should be equity. Equity means every person should have the right of getting every person should have the right every person should have equal chance of getting selected in the sample. One actually this means that the researcher should not have that right कि उसको उसको जिसको सेलेक्ट करना है वो उसे करे. Every sample should have equal chance of getting selected in the survey. So that says the equity. Okay, so these are some of the points of research ethics. Okay, and next in research ethics, which I personally believe is very important, is plagiarism. See, see, whatever you are researching, you need to give you need to give an authentic research to the world. You need to get you need to come up with your finding and not copy pasting someone else's finding without acknowledging them. So plagiarism and acknowledging the authorship is very important. One should always acknowledge, and one should always cite the author's name in the research. Okay, now uh, now here comes the types of data. What are the types of data? There are three types of data: time series data, cross sectional data, and panel data. Now in time series data, you can one observation is studied for a period of time. Okay, in this data there is only one observation which is studied for a period of like 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Okay, like for example, I have given here, like if I have to measure, if I have to analyze the GDP of Bihar from 2000 to 2025, it is a time series data. If I collect GDP of Bihar from 2000 to 2025, or you can say GDP of India from 2000 to 2025, 2025. So here the observation is one, which is the GDP, and the time limit is 25, from 2000 to 25, 2025. Okay, so this is your time series data where only one observation is studied for a period of time. Now second is your cross sectional data, which is just the opposite of time series data. So here you have here actually you have collected many observation at a single point of time. For example, in time series data, we had an example of studying the GDP of Bihar from 2000 to 2025. Now in cross sectional data, if we want to study the GDP of all the 28 states and 7 UTs uh, for for actually 2025, then it becomes a cross sectional data, because here you are studying here you are studying 35 observation for a single period of time. So in cross sectional data there is a single period of time, and the number of observation are more than one. So cross sectional data is the opposite of your time series data. Okay, now the third one is panel data, which is also called longitudinal data. And panel data is a mix of both, like time series and cross sectional data. So observations here in panel data are actually collected for multiple subject across multiple periods of time. Again we will take the same example, GDP of all states from 2000 to 2025. So here the cross sectional units are all the states, which is 35, and the time period is 2000 to 2025. So it has combined both the time series data and the cross-sectional data. Now, based on your data, you will select your methodology. Whenever we do a research, if we are doing a research on time series data, then the methodology will be ARIMA modeling, and ARIMA modeling, SARIMA modeling, forecasting. So time series data, time series data, you mostly go for forecasting. Second, when it's a cross-sectional data, when you come up with cross-sectional data, then the methodology changes. Then the test you will apply will be logistic regression modeling, binomial logistic regression modeling, multinomial logistic regression modeling. That will be the methodology used for cross-sectional data. If you have a panel data, then you will do panel data regression, that is fixed effect, random effect. Then you will go for that methodology. Each and every data has different methodology to be used. Okay. Now, lastly, we'll see the classical linear regression model, the assumption of classical linear regression model. Before going on to the assumption, we will just briefly discuss what CLRM is and what is the population regression function. So the CLRM describes the relationship between the dependent variable and one or more independent variable. Okay. Now pay a little bit attention and see the model. The model here is yi is equal to beta naught plus beta 1 xi plus ei. Here y is the dependent variable, xi is the independent variable. Beta naught is the intercept coefficient which measure the value of y when x is 0. Beta 1 is the slope coefficient which measures the changes in y for 1 unit change in x. And ei is the error term. Now we'll understand this thing with an example. Supposingly the dependent variable here is your consumption. Yi is consumption. Okay. And the independent variable here is income. Independent variable is xi. So yi is consumption and xi is your income. Now what will the slope measure? Like what will the beta 1 measure? Beta 1 will measure the percentage change or 1 unit change in yi, that is dependent variable, because of the independent variable, which means that percentage change in consumption because of percentage change in income. Beta 1 will measure that. If beta 1 will measure that, what will beta not measure? Now you yourself think, if xi is 0, supposingly if xi is 0, I am a student, I'm not earning anything. Okay, so my income goes to 0, xi is equal to 0. If xi is 0, beta 1 is also 0. Then the model becomes yi is equal to beta naught plus ei. Now, if I'm not earning anything, then also I will actually consume something. Supposingly I'm a student, I'm actually studying, I'm not earning anything, but still I am consuming, I'm eating food, I'm buying clothes, I'm going out, I'm paying bills. So where did that money come from? That money came from, parents, your pocket money or anything, right? So beta naught measures that when x is 0, what is the value of y? Okay, so beta naught measures that. Now ei is the error term. Error term is very, very important in your classical regression function. Achha, one more thing. The model here is population regression function. When we do modeling, we actually do modeling on sample regression function. Sample regression function is the same as this mentioned here, but we apply we apply a hat above all the variables. That is yi hat is equal to beta naught hat, beta 1 xi hat plus ei hat. That becomes your sample regression function. Okay. Okay. Just 2 minutes. We will see this. So this line, which is this is the red line. This is the sample regression function, and all these dots are your error term, which we have discussed. This ei error term. Okay. So as visible from this diagram, you can see that error term are positive as well as negative. All the points above the sample regression function are positive, and all the points below the sample regression function are negative, है ना? So these are positive as well as negative. So the error will be minimized here when the gap between the SRF line and these green points are your error terms. So when the gap between the SRF and the error term will be minimized, then the error will be minimum, and that is the main motive of our model, to minimize the error term. So the error term will be minimized when the gap between the sample regression function and the dotted line dots will be minimum. So as to estimate the model, it is very essential to reduce the summation of the error term. Now, the next question here comes is, why summation? Why you need summation of the error term? We need summation of the error term because we have seen here that some of the error term are positive, like some of the error term are above the line, and some of the error term are negative, which is below the line. So we square them, that so there are positive and some are negative, so that's why we have to square them. That means to come up with an absolute value. So to come up with an absolute value, we need to square them. So our motive is to minimize the square of the error term. And why do we square the error term? We need to square the error term to come up with an absolute value. Okay. So last part is your assumption of the classical linear regression model. First assumption of your CLRM is the linearity of the model, which means linearity in the parameters. Parameters are alpha and beta. Beta naught and beta 1. They both are your parameters. They have to be linear. By linear, we means the power 1. It should not be square, it should not be cube, it should not be log, it should not be anything. It should have power 1. Okay, it should be linear. Next is, in this model, we talk about x. X is your independent variable. Now here x has to be fixed or x has to be non-random. This is because if x changes, then we won't get the exact value of estimated variables. Because if x will keep on changing, then we won't get the exact value of y. Okay. Then next is your conditional mean of the error term, which needs to be 0. Okay, this is also your one of the main assumption of your model. Then comes your homoscedasticity. Homoscedasticity means no heteroscedasticity. By homoscedasticity, we mean variance of error term. That means variance of error term should be constant. By variance, what do you mean by variance? By variance, we means the spread or dispersion of error term. See, here these dotted lines are the dispersion of error term around the regression line. So this is the variance. So one of our assumption is that there should be constant variation, constant variance. If this is not satisfied, then we come up with the problem of heteroscedasticity. Okay. Now, the next one is no autocorrelation, or we can say no serial correlation. Okay, this means that when there is no correlation, or there is no type of relationship between the error term of two different samples. Okay, now in a population, it is not easy or it is not feasible to study the whole population. We take out a sample from that population. Okay, now if we take 2 samples or 3 samples, the error term of all those 3 samples should not be correlated with each other. Every sample's error term should not have any type of relationship with each other. That is, it means no correlation or no actually relationship between the error term of 2 different samples. Okay. Suppose, like for example, if I say, suppose we have 2 samples, I and j, then the error term of these 2 samples, which will be ui and uj, they should not be correlated to each other, because then the effect of one error term on the dependent variable is will be same what the other error term will must be having. Okay, if both will be correlated, then the effect of one error term on the dependent variable will be same as the other. Okay, now the next one is zero covariance between the error term and the regressor. See, if there will be covariance between these two, if there will be covariance between UI, that is error term, and actually regressor, that is regressor here is your xi, which is the independent variable. If there will be covariance between these two, then the effect of x and u on y will not be separately measured. We have to measure the effect of x on y and u on y separately. If this assumption is not met, zero covariance between error term and regressor is not met, then we won't be able to measure their impact separately. Okay. So next comes your multicollinearity. Okay, multicollinearity. Now in this model, see, in this model, there will be no problem of multicollinearity because there is only one independent variable. Supposingly, if we stretch this model, suppose this model becomes yi is equal to beta naught, beta 1 xi, beta 2 xi, and ei, then there will be two independent variables. So multicollinearity arises when there is more than one independent variable. Okay. So multicollinearity means there should be no relationship between two independent variables. Okay, there should be uh, no collinearity, no type of relationship between two independent variables. Reason is the same as we discussed above, which is zero covariance between error term and regressor. Because if two independent variable will be correlated, then we won't be able to measure the impact of then we won't be able to measure their impact separately. So we need to measure their impact separately. Therefore, two independent variables should not have any type of relationship with each other. Okay. Last is your variability in independent variable. So whenever we have a particular sample, it is very much recommendable to have the value of x is different, which means independent variables, if we have a model which has 2 or 3 independent variables, so there should be variability in independent variables. The independent variables should not be same, the values cannot be similar. Okay, so the values has to be different. So so these are the assumption of classical linear regression model. With this, I end my session here. I hope it gave you some insight, and thank you so much. Now the floor is all yours, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tanya, for giving us this excellent presentation. And especially it is really required when the session goes on from tomorrow onwards. These are the foundational things or the basic things, that one should understand in terms of research methods and econometrics. So I hope our participants would have a lot of questions and queries that, you would like to address them. So I've seen few in the chat box. I think Shankar has raised the hand first. So if he would like to unmute himself and ask the question, he may. Shankar, if you would like to unmute yourself and ask, we'll go one by one. That way. Are you there?
Hello, ma'am. Hello.
Hello.
Are you audible, madam?
Yes, a little bit louder.
Okay. Madam, thank you for. First of all, one question is there. If the data is not normally distributed, what do we do? If data
What?
is not normally distributed.
See, normality means your mean and variance should be equal, right? You can achieve that thing, and normality is also very important, that the data should be normally distributed. It is also a very key characteristic of your sample, and by normality can be achieved if you see your mean and variance.
Okay, madam. But in case if the data is not normally distributed, is it apply for the regression model or not? If the data is not normally distributed, so is it application of the regression model is apply for the data or not?
No, then I don't think so. Then the application of OLS method or any type of regression method would be there. The data should be normally distributed, and there are various methods, I think, to achieve that normality. Right now, I'm not able to recall those methods, but
Yeah, let me jump here. From tomorrow we are having practical sessions.
Hello. One more question is there, ma'am. Then the variability in independent variable. But in case dependent variable is not variability, but independent variable is only variability is there. But in the case of dependent variable is not variability. Your assumption, your slide is open, madam, please.
I'm really sorry. I'm not able to hear your question properly. If
Can
you
you
could,
can you increase volume of your
can you please
laptop or
increase the
phone?
volume?
Okay. But I'm trying to say that. Hello.
Yes, please
Hello.
go ahead.
The variability in independent variable, you say, if the data
Yes,
is not variability in dependent variable. For example, consumption is not variability. Consumption is depend upon income, as your example. The consumption is not variability. Consumption is same.
Okay, but if consumption will be fixed, then what will you measure? Dependent variable need not to be fixed, na? We have to
You
see the
say, madam.
impact of independent variable on dependent variable, na?
Yes, madam. Your slide shows that last assumption there is a
Variability in
variability
xi,
xi.
right?
If
Variability in independent variable. Yeah, I said that, like, we have a model na, which say y is equal to beta naught plus beta 1 x1 plus beta 1 beta 2 x2. If we have two independent variables, right? If we have two independent variables, there should be variability in those two independent variables. Those two independent variables cannot be same. Because if it will be same, then we won't be able to measure the impact separately of each independent variable on the dependent variable.
my question is, madam, if the variability in independent variable, but data is similar in the dependent variable, what is the impact? Is it construct the model or not? As a
Sir, could you
researcher,
please help me understand this question? I'm not able to understand this question.
okay. A simple
Excuse
question.
me, madam.
Yes.
Madam, he is trying to ask the consumption is same, but income is increasing.
Consumption is same. Okay, income is
Consumption is
increasing.
same. If increase in the income also,
Okay.
so it is the model is significant or not?
Yeah, model can be see income is one independent variable. If in a model, supposingly, I add on one more independent variable, which is your wealth. Okay, xi is your income and x2 is your wealth. So we can say, so if in a finding it comes that there is no impact of income on consumption, like if income increases, consumption doesn't increase, so that is valid. Because if because in that result it can come that because of wealth the consumption might increase. The consumption might not increase with the increase in income, but consumption might increase with increase in wealth, which is your second independent variable.
Okay. Shankar, are you satisfied?
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, you are mute.
All right.
I'm mute.
No, I'm mute. I'm sorry. Sankar, I hope ma'am has answered your question. So from tomorrow onwards, there will be other important session where your queries would be, responded in a very practical way. So thank you very much for your question. The next question for you, Tanya, is from Kiran Kumari. So she asked, why is it required to minimize the value of error term?
Why it is
Required to minimize the value of error term.
okay. Now see the diagram which I have shown. Okay, the diagram which I showed, which I have showed, which is the sample regression function, and those and those dots which are the error term. Okay, so error term needs to be minimized in order to generalize the research. Because when error term will be see, if the error term will be maximum, or if it has for example, I'll say that we are measuring a model. Okay, the impact of x on y. So we will measure the impact of X on Y. We will get the value of the we will get the value of that slope. UI, your error term your error term includes all those things, little things which actually impact the dependent variable. If error will be maximum, then the impact of those error term on dependent variable will be maximum, and the impact of independent variable on dependent variable will be minimum, which you are actually measuring. So the impact of the thing which you are measuring should have more impact. So that's why we say that error term should be minimum. The impact of independent variable should be more and more on the dependent variable.
You are again mute.
I'm
No.
No.
Okay, let's go on to the other question. It is from Dr. Amandeep Kaur. So he asks, is it the point indicating error or the deviation from actual to the projected value?
It is the
point indicating error or the deviation from actual to
it
the
is the
projected
deviation
value.
from
Okay.
it is the gap between that line and the dots, which is the
All right.
error term.
Okay, that was small and quick. So let's go to Dr. Maya. She asks, last assumption is wrong. Variability should be in DV, not in IV. IV should be fixed in nature.
No, by variability in independent variable, I meant variability in the different independent variable. If we have 2 or 3 independent variable, there should be in those 3 independent variable.
I think independent variable should not be fixed, right? It is the dependent variable. So I think there's some
Yeah,
confusion.
it applies for both, whether we are running single model or multiple regression model. Always independent variable should be variable, in variability in nature.
All right.
So, but there should be not, they should not be very, related with each other. If there are two independent variables, as I want
They
to say,
should be not really, yeah.
there should be not, multi-correlation like this. But always independent variable should be variable. If you are having any, confusions, kindly, refer to some basic econometric book. You will find it that independent variable should be always variable.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. So there are a lot of appreciation for your presentation after that. So let's come to Ananta Saho. So he says, please explain the point homodasticity and heterodasticity.
So let me stop it here. We are having separate session for this. So we
Okay.
cannot complete all things here. I
It
know
is
ma'am is
actually
capable.
a very broad topic. Homoskedasticity, it is actually a chapter. Heteroskedasticity, autocorrelation, multicollinearity. It is actually a separate chapter, which is very which is very
Definitely,
much
the other session might be there,
yeah.
to cover all these
Yeah.
things in
You
detail.
have
So
those
today's session is just
those
a
topics
basic.
covered in the upcoming
Yes.
sessions.
So today's was just to give you the basics and the fundamentals of RM. Okay. So another one is Dirakar Swain. Give me some books or PDF references for more knowledge. Just asking for some reference.
Okay.
So
See,
I will be sharing books on WhatsApp.
But
So,
for
Somebody has responded also.
but for econometrics, I would say that Damodar Gujarati is the best book which I feel. It is very
Somebody
easy.
has responded with the same.
It is actually very easy to
all over
easy to
India.
understand.
All right. So we have other appreciation for you. And then we have Sayantan Guha Mazumdar. So he asks, if sample size is more than 30, right? Just a second. Yes. Then does normality matter? I have read that due to the central limit theorem, is sample size is more than 30 and the data is not normal, still we can use regression. Please clarify.
I would give I could not give the exact answer to this, but if you ask me, the sample size should be above 30 if you want to do a good analysis. The sample size should be that good enough to represent the population. Sample size of 30 will not be that enough, or else if your population is just 100 or something, then the sample size of 30 could be a good actually decision. But if the population size is large, then the sample size should be a representative of your population. And for sample size calculation, there are also methods where you need to apply your population number, and then on the basis of your population number you will get the sample size, which is also known as sample size calculator. You can also study that in Google. It is very easy, and it actually gives you the exact value of exact number of sample which one should collect.
All right. So Miss Mansi asks, can you suggest a model for checking impulse, repeat and spot purchasing in fast food chain?
Can you suggest a model? Sorry, ma'am.
Yes, can you suggest a model for checking impulse, repeat and spot purchasing in fast food chain?
I'm really sorry. I'm not able to answer. I really don't know this, but I will surely search about it. I'm not able to understand this question properly, so I would not like to answer it, because I would not want to answer anything which I'm not sure about. I'm really sorry.
That's all right. So maybe okay. Okay. Sujata Kumari asks, can you please explain again why summation of error term with the real life example?
Summation of error term. See, summation of error term, I told you that error term can be positive and negative, है ना? So to come up with an absolute value or to come up with a positive value, you need to do square or actually summation. That's why we do summation of the error term, and the objective become the summation of error term should be 0 or something. So we do the summation because the error term here are positive as well as negative.
Okay. Sujata again asks for some example of panel data.
Panel data. Okay. See, I'll give you an example from my own research study. I did a study on financial inclusion and financial inclusion and economic growth and economic analysis of feedback mechanism. Okay. So I collected data on financial inclusion. For financial inclusion, I actually collected data of index of financial inclusion, which was available in CRISIL inclusive reports. Okay. So the data I found out state-wise. So I took state-wise data of IFI, okay, for all the states from 2012 to I think 2018. Okay, so it became a panel data because the number of observations were 35, all the states and UTs, and the time was 2012 to 2018. So this was the panel data which was a mixture of time series and cross sectional. So when I had panel data, I could not use the simple regression function. For panel data regression, you have to do a separate regression, which is fixed effect modeling and random effect modeling. And I think it will be covered in your session also, fixed effect and random effect, which we usually do when we have a panel data. Ma'am, I can't hear you.
So there's one more question from Jagdish. He says, we have some data in absolute form and some are in relative data. Can we calculate the correlation and regression of that data?
One data is in absolute and one in relative.
Yes. Can we calculate the correlation and regression of that data?
See, I can't be sure, but as far as I remember, I don't think so. It is a good decision. Sir, could you please help if we have absolute and relative data?
We can never go. There should be uniformity in data.
Yeah.
Data should always be in uniformity. So you cannot
I had that idea, but I was 1% unsure. I thought matlab koi methodology, koi method or test na ho. But yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another. When is GMM estimation used?
GMM?
Estimation.
Could you please give the full form?
Yes.
GLS or GMM?
M for mango. It's GMM. Okay. Yes.
Okay. Full form?
Yes, please tell me the full form. Generalized method of moments.
Oh, I'm really sorry. I don't
So
have
these
that.
are time series models. So here I will request to all the participants. If you see the title of today's session, it was introductory. You cannot mix it and for the sake of questions ask a question. You ask questions related to this session. In coming up sessions, there will be in-depth discussion and keep your good questions ready. So
Yes,
today's session
participants are
was
requested.
basics. If you are having questions related to classical regression model, about learning basics of research, this session was all about this. So yeah.
Yeah, so the participants are requested to stick to the presentation that Dr. Tanya made today, and anything clarification related to whatever she presented today, you may ask in today's session. So if anybody has any question related to today's session, they may raise your hand or they may type it in the chat box. Okay, there is one question from Nischal. In the research steps to be followed, isn't identifying a gap a step before literature review? Uh, After all, literature review is all about finding gaps.
No. Research gap, as I told you, it comes after the literature review. You find research gap after doing a thorough, deep investigation into the literature. So then only you will come up with the research gap. You will find what are the gap which needs to be studied, what you will study in your in uh, in your research. So research gaps comes after the review of literature.
Thank you. Anybody else? Do anyone have any question related to today's session? The basics of RM and
And also I would like to say to all the participants, if any one of you need any resource material or any research material related to the topic which I have discussed, you can email me, and I will surely give you the uh, papers or actually research material.
anyone, if you have any question, please type it in the chat box or you may raise your hand. Somebody is asking for your email ID.
Okay. Tanya Nautyal 92@gmail.com. TANYANAUTIYAL 92@gmail.com.
You can search her on LinkedIn and you can get connected.
Yeah.
So that will be easy to get your queries to be followed up. So we are having one more minute. If you are having any question, please go ahead.
I think so. We are done. There are no more questions. So can anybody, tell us if you have any question for the last time we are asking? Otherwise, we will close the session. No, I think Dr. Firdaus, we are not having any more questions. Seems.
Okay, you would like to close it?
Yes. Thank you, participants, for your patience today and being a very excellent participant for today's session. Especially thanks to Dr. Tanya for giving us such a very, very insightful session on the basics of research. And it's a very, very, the session has started very, very beautifully because from tomorrow onwards, there are going to be a rigorous session, and this session would be a background for them to learn. So thank you very much, Dr. Tanya, and nice meeting you. And thank you, Dr. Firdaus, very much for inviting me to moderate this session. I hope to, be in such sessions in future also. Thank you, Dr. Firdaus, for this.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you so much, sir. And thank you to all the participants. Thank you.
So let me take this opportunity to thank you both our resource person and moderator for accepting our invitation at very short notice and adding insights to this great research workshop. So I would like to Dr. Tanya for brushing up the beginning of research basics and lifting it towards the assumptions of research methodology and classical linear regression model. And I am especially thankful to Dr. Rubina Pradhan for contributing and participating in our programs always and be remaining ready to serve for the cause of research and development. So I would, take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of Jammu and Kashmir Economic Association. So now I am stopping the recording.